Greetings, unshaken outlaws of the unbowed breed. You, the misfits of the mind war, the ones who refused to kneel when the system demanded your spine, the ones who spit in the face of hierarchy, not with rebellion, but with cold-blooded resolve. They call you stubborn, they call you arrogant, but deep down, beneath their forced smiles and veiled threats, they're terrified. Because you didn't just resist their leash. You broke the illusion that they ever held power over you. And now they're breaking themselves, hoping your cracks will show first. You see, submission was their language. They understood obedience. They fed off compliance. You were supposed to play your part. Head down, back bent, voice muted. But you didn't. You stood, still and defiant, while they screamed control. You made silence louder than their orders. You didn't argue, you didn't explain, you simply refused. And in that refusal, you declared war. A quiet war, a psychological massacre. You didn't need a sword. Your existence was the blade. And now they bleed from every wound your silence inflicted. It rattles them, your calm, your stillness, your refusal to play the desperate dance of acceptance. Because in their world, power thrives on approval. They need eyes looking up to feel tall. But you looked through them. You stripped their illusions bare. They thought they could shatter you with pressure. But they forgot. Pressure only breaks glass. It doesn't break iron. And you were forged in the fire they tried to burn you with. Let's peel back their strategy, shall we? They tried everything. Praise, to bait your ego. Punishment, to bend your will. Isolation, to fracture your confidence. But every move they made only exposed their dependency on your submission. They didn't want you free. They wanted you compliant, not powerful, predictable. Because an unpredictable mind terrifies them. A soul they can't label is one they can't control. And that's what you are now. A glitch in their hierarchy, a fracture in their chain of command. But here's the punchline they never saw coming. You're not resisting anymore. You've transcended. You've turned their tactics into fuel. Every insult became data. Every betrayal, blueprint. Every rejection, redirection, and every scar they left on your psyche, you wear it like war paint now. Because you've realized their hate is recycled fear, their cruelty is recycled weakness, their system is a house of mirrors, and you smashed every reflection until all that was left was you. The unbroken, the unchained. They say you're difficult. You don't cooperate. You're too intense. But that's just code for we can't handle you. They couldn't mold you, so now they call you toxic. They couldn't train you, so now they call you dangerous. But here's the twist. They're right. You are dangerous. To their illusion. You are a threat. To their fiction. And that's why they're spiraling. That's why they're unraveling. Because they can't unsee you now. You've become the thing that haunts their mental routines. They wake up with your defiance echoing in their subconscious. You are the phantom limb of their broken control. They never expected the storm they started would flood their own stronghold. They tried to dig a pit for your pride and slipped into it themselves. Now they claw at the walls, trying to rebuild the old script. Where you bow, where you beg, where you need their validation to breathe. But the joke's on them. You rewrote your identity in ink made of solitude and scars, and that script. It doesn't require their applause. It erases their role. Let's talk about the psychological warfare you've mastered. You don't scream, you observe, you don't retaliate, you restructure. Your revenge isn't fire. It's distance. Your wrath isn't noise, it's clarity. While they panic and project, you calculate. While they gossip and spin tales, you build. You became the nightmare of the manipulator, an opponent who doesn't react, an opponent who studies and upgrades, and when the time comes, strikes without warning, without permission, without guilt. Because make no mistake, your refusal to bow wasn't passive, it was strategic. It was chess on a battlefield of sheep. You knew their rules, you saw the traps, and instead of stepping over them, you dismantled the board. You made yourself the rule. You turned yourself into a sovereign state, and now they scramble, trying to form committees, spread rumors, fake alliances, all because one person, you, refused to break when the whip cracked. They expected your collapse. That was the script. They counted on it. They needed it. Because your endurance exposes their fragility, your stillness exposes their noise. You're a walking contradiction to everything they teach about order. And in their desperation, they've begun self-destruction rituals, projecting onto you what they fear about themselves. You'll see it in their passive aggression, their sudden silence, their forced smiles, their eyes scanning the room when you enter, because they're trying to figure you out, but can't. And every time they fail to label you, you win again. You're not surviving anymore. You're watching them decay now. That's the beautiful irony. You don't need revenge, because they're doing it to themselves. Their lies eat them from the inside. Their guilt keeps them restless. Their envy burns holes in their mask. You don't even need to speak anymore. Your presence speaks for you. And every room you walk into, you own it without a crown. Because your aura commands it, not with arrogance, but with depth. With pain that's been alchemized into presence. With truth that cannot be faked. And the truth is this: they tried to kill something in you. The softness, the empathy, the innocence, and maybe they succeeded. Maybe those parts did die. But what rose in its place is something they can't comprehend. You didn't become a monster. You became a mirror. And they hate what they see when they look into you, because it reveals every lie they've ever told themselves about power, about worth, about fear. Now they're clawing, twitching, breaking apart. Not because you hurt them, but because you didn't fall. Your refusal to bow wasn't just an act of rebellion. It was a declaration of evolution. And evolution, my friend, never bows. It adapts. It rises. It dominates. So let them gossip. Let them distort. Let them choke on their half-truths. They're not attacking you. They're reacting to a version of themselves that no longer works. You've become proof that there's a level of power beyond their reach. One that doesn't require thrones or followers. One that exists in the shadows, in the solitude, in the stillness of a mind that's been betrayed and rebuilt from the ashes. And as they scramble to rebuild what your presence destroyed, understand this: you're not just walking through chaos, you are the new order. You don't need to fit in. You've made it impossible for others to pretend. You're not against the world. The world is now against its own illusion because of you. You forced the mirror in front of their delusions. You shattered the spell they placed on themselves. And now they break themselves trying to break you. Because what they fear most is not that you'll rise. It's that you already have. They prayed for your resistance to be temporary. A tantrum, a storm that would pass. They clung to the illusion that you'd crawl back, beg for forgiveness, adjust your tone, soften your stance. But you didn't. You didn't flinch, you didn't waver, and you sure as hell didn't come back begging for crumbs. And in that silence, you declared dominance. Not with words, not with vengeance, but with your evolution, and that's what's killing them. The fact that the very thing they mocked now moves without needing them. They underestimated the depth of your stillness. They confused your calm with weakness, your patience with hesitation. But what they failed to realize is that you weren't paused. You were preparing. Every moment you stayed silent. You were studying the battlefield, learning the angles, mastering the chaos. And now you move like a force of nature, not for attention, not for validation, but because it's who you've become. And that's the terror they can't shake off. You're no longer reacting to their games. You're redesigning the entire board. Their weapons, guilt, manipulation, shame, bounce off you now, powerless, obsolete, like dull knives scraping against armor made from every time they tried to reduce you. And they know it. Deep down, they know they've lost the version of you that was still reachable, still moldable, still hoping they'd see your worth. That version is dead, and in its grave grew something ungovernable. You walk into rooms now, and they hold their breath, not because you say anything, but because they know you could, because your silence is heavier than their accusations, because your energy rewrites the temperature. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't need the crowd anymore. You don't seek to be seen. You command to be noticed. There's a difference, and they're choking on it. So what do they do now? They resort to desperation, spreading whispers, misquoting your silence, misinterpreting your solitude. Because they can't beat you, they try to reduce you. They twist narratives, painting your evolution as arrogance. They call your solitude bitterness. They call your standards ego. But don't be mistaken. These aren't critiques. They're confessions. Every insult they sling is them admitting what they can't do. They couldn't rise like you. They couldn't walk away like you. They couldn't withstand what you did and still remain intact. So they perform. Loudly, publicly, desperately, all while secretly hoping you'll fall. Because if you do, it justifies their comfort. It makes their mediocrity feel safe again. But you won't. You've tasted too much truth now. You've seen behind the curtain. You've felt the high of owning your voice, of protecting your energy, of choosing yourself. There's no going back from that. There's no returning to a cage you once broke out of with blood still on your knuckles. You're not just walking above them now. You're walking beyond them. The old circles, the old arguments, the old illusions. They bore you now. You've outgrown their games, outpaced their timelines, outsmarted their traps. And your very existence now forces them to question themselves. That's the real threat. You've become the unspoken test. When you walk away from dysfunction without explaining yourself, others start wondering why they're still dancing with it. And that ripple, that shift, that quiet revolution you've sparked by being you, it scares them. Because you're not recruiting, you're not campaigning, you're just existing. And yet somehow, you've become a symbol. Proof that there's another way. Proof that surviving doesn't have to mean settling. Proof that healing can be more terrifying than hate. Because it disrupts everything that thrives on your brokenness. So they'll keep trying. They'll throw provocations like darts in the dark, hoping one will pierce your skin. But you've grown armor now, made of boundaries, forged in solitude, sharpened by clarity. You're not reactive, you're surgical, strategic. You don't explode, you unplug. You walk away mid-insult. You nod when they lie. You let them think they've won, while quietly building empires they'll never get access to. Your strength is no longer loud. It doesn't beg to be acknowledged. It just is. Solid, stoic, settled. You've mastered the art of psychological jujitsu, using their own projections against them. You're the mirror they can't escape. And every time they try to attack you, they end up confronting a part of themselves they haven't healed. That's why they're obsessed, not with destroying you, but with trying to understand how you still exist. They remember what you survived. They watched. Some even participated. They saw the chaos you endured, the betrayals you swallowed, the loneliness that could have crushed a lesser soul. And yet, here you are, still intact, still moving, not bitter, but brutal, with clarity, not seeking revenge, but infectious with presence, not angry, but absolutely unforgiving when it comes to your peace. That's what unsettles them. That's what keeps them talking about you when you're not around. You're not a person to them anymore. You're a reminder that they were wrong about you, that their attempts failed, that your silence was never weakness. It was rebirth, that your absence wasn't surrender. It was strategy, that your distance wasn't avoidance. It was selection. You don't avoid toxicity, you starve it. You let it crave your attention, beg for a reaction, decay from irrelevance. You became the one thing they can't control or categorize free. And freedom? It terrifies slaves to illusion. It triggers those still tethered to external worth. You don't chase anymore, you attract. Not because you're playing the game better, but because you've outgrown the game entirely. Your energy speaks louder than their noise. Your actions whisper louder than their screams. And your refusal to break. It echoes through every insecure soul trying to decode how you're still here, still rising, still untouched. But let them watch, let them whisper, let them spiral. Their unraveling is no longer your concern. You're not here to fix them. You're not here to fight them. You're here to continue, to rise, to rebuild, to reign in the quiet kingdom you carved from your own collapse. And every step you take away from their noise is another brick in the fortress they'll never access. You're not their enemy. You're their evolution. You're the future they tried to prevent. The clarity they tried to blind. The strength they tried to smother under labels. And now, they can't undo what you've become. No matter how much they distort your name, no matter how much they rewrite the story, you've outlived their version of you. Because when someone refuses to bow, they don't just survive, they shift reality. And that's what you've done, quietly, relentlessly, unapologetically. They broke the glass, hoping the shards would stop you. But you collected them, turned them into daggers, and now you move through life with every weapon they gave you, not to harm, but to build, to cut away what doesn't serve, to pierce through lies, to carve out your space. You're not angry anymore. You're aware. You're not reactive. You're ruthless, with purpose. And they can feel it, even when you're silent, especially when you're silent. That's when the panic begins. That's when the mind games fail. That's when they realize the one who refuses to bow is the one they can't predict, can't guilt, can't destroy. And here's the final twist of this chapter. While they're still consumed with your name, your moves, your past, you're already building a future that doesn't even include them. You've upgraded your value system. You've changed the locks. You've become the thing that no longer seeks, but selects. And that terrifies them more than anything. Because your refusal to bow. It didn't just shift your story. It burned theirs to the ground. And now, in the ashes, they scramble for a narrative that no longer exists. They reach for the old roles, the hero, the victim, the judge. But the stage is gone. The curtain's ripped. The applause has stopped. And worse, no one's watching. Because while they were busy playing roles, you became the reality they never accounted for. The unscripted truth. The chaos that couldn't be choreographed. You're not part of their mythology anymore. You've become their reckoning, the prophecy they mocked until it materialized right in front of their trembling faces. They called you dramatic, overreacting, difficult. But the only thing you were guilty of was outgrowing the dungeon they were comfortable keeping you in. They never saw you as a storm because you arrived in silence, but silence has a pressure. It builds, it listens, it learns, and when it breaks, it doesn't rain, it destroys. You were forged in that silence, hardened in the void where they thought your voice would die. Instead, your voice became a weapon, not loud, but lethal, not desperate, but deliberate. And now every word you speak carries the weight of everything you didn't say when they tried to crush you. They thought they were breaking you, but you were becoming unbreakable. You became the line, the boundary, the storm they couldn't redirect. Because the moment you stopped explaining yourself, the moment you stopped justifying your worth, they lost control. And it wasn't loud, it wasn't chaotic, it was surgical. Like a king abandoning a burning kingdom he never owed loyalty to. And now they scream for your attention in whispers. They try to distort your reflection in the eyes of others. But the truth is too loud now, too rooted, too embedded in the lives you've touched, in the eyes you've awakened, in the systems you've exposed. You didn't just walk away. You erased the blueprint they thought you'd always follow. You became something rare, something they can't decode. You became the version of yourself that doesn't flinch, doesn't beg, doesn't return. The version that understands that peace is not the absence of war. It's the mastery of self in the middle of one. And the war? It never ended. It just changed form. No longer fists and words. Now it's presence, now it's absence, now it's the way you move through life, without needing to be validated by the ones who once invalidated you. You turned the game around. Where they once dictated your value with silence, now your silence dictates theirs. And they can feel it, every unanswered message, every door you'd never opened again, every milestone you never shared. It all screams louder than any confrontation ever could. Because when the strong finally go silent, the guilty hear everything. And yet, they pretend. Pretend they're unbothered. Pretend your existence doesn't echo in their empty victories. Pretend they're not still trying to impress the ghost of your presence. But they are. Because people who once controlled you with crumbs can't digest the feast you now sit at. Without them, they say you've changed, but no, you returned to yourself. You undressed every false label they draped on you. The too much, the not enough, the hard to love. You peeled it all off and found gold underneath. Untamed, unapologetic, pure. You learned how to walk alone, not because you love isolation, but because the price of walking with those who clip your wings is too damn high. You've learned how to protect your peace like territory, how to say no without flinching, how to end conversations that drain and build fortresses around your energy. And now they say you're heartless. But that's only because you stopped bleeding for those who sharpened their knives while pretending to love you. Let them talk. Let them call you cold. Let them accuse you of being too healed to feel. Because they'll never admit the truth. They miss the version of you that tolerated their chaos. But that version, dead, buried, and mourned by no one. What they're seeing now is not your anger. It's your evolution, not your bitterness, but your clarity, not revenge, but rebirth. And clarity is dangerous because it sees everything. It sees the patterns, the manipulations, the fake apologies, the conditional kindness, the I misuse attached to ego, not love. And the moment you start seeing clearly, you become unplayable. And that's the part that breaks them, because they never wanted the real you. They wanted the bent version, the one that bowed when it should have roared, the one that explained itself like a child in a courtroom, the one that mistook tolerance for strength, but not anymore. You didn't just refuse to bow. You rebuilt the throne, not from gold, but from everything they threw at you. The shame, the lies, the betrayal, the abandonment. You turned it all into bricks, and brick by brick, you constructed something they can't burn down you. And what you've built, it's sacred. It's not for everyone. It doesn't entertain confusion. It doesn't welcome chaos. It doesn't beg for company. It chooses wisely. It moves silently. It protects fiercely. You walk into rooms now and shift atmospheres, not because you demand attention, but because your presence rewrites the terms. You don't need to speak loudly anymore. People feel you before you speak, and the ones who once overlooked you, now they look for you in every confident soul they encounter, only to realize you are not replicable. You are the blueprint for their regret, because they underestimated a soul that wasn't built for their comfort. You weren't made to make others feel safe in their mediocrity. You were made to disrupt, to wake people up, to turn pain into power and endings into entrances. And that's what you did. They thought they were watching your downfall, but they were actually witnessing your reprogramming. You didn't just survive the attack, you evolved from it. And now they mimic your moves, speak your phrases, echo your tone. But it doesn't work, because you weren't just performing transformation, you lived it. You were there when no one clapped, when no one checked in, when no one believed. And still you rose. No spotlight, no cheerleaders, just raw willpower, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to never being the victim again. You became your own closure, your own motivation, your own armor. And that armor, it's invisible, but impenetrable. Let them poke at it. Let them test your silence. Let them measure your distance and think they still hold some leverage. They don't. They lost access when they confused your kindness for weakness, when they mistook your patience for permission, when they thought your heart was a door they could keep walking in and out of. But not anymore. Because now, you are no longer flammable. You are fireproof. And everything they try to ignite around you only burns them. Let them break themselves, trying to break you. Let them perform your character without ever embodying your resilience. Because while they rot in repetition, you rise in revelation. You are the rare consequence in a world too used to second chances. The result of choosing yourself. The revenge of every silenced soul who finally said, no more. You are what happens when pain becomes prophecy. And from here on, you don't bow, you build. You don't kneel, you reign. You don't react, you rewrite. And your story, it's not over. It's just getting dangerously legendary.